In May of 2025, I made a colossal mistake. I decided not to do an analysis on A24's latest horror film, Bring Her Back. Of course, I enjoyed the movie in all its darkness, but I failed to comprehend how much passion, depth, and subtext this movie and these two filmmakers actually have. And after reading into the life-altering tragedies that inspired the Philippou brothers to write and direct this story, I feel like I need to share my research and insights even 3 months later. And there's a lot to discuss on the personal inspiration, the occultist rituals, the character themes, the director's techniques, and the mysterious symbolism all through the film, especially in the very end. And we'll analyze this movie as we usually do using 3 themes: ritual of desperation, misleading the blind, and denial of death, with the hope that I can have some redemption for missing easily one of the best made and most touching films of 2025. Hope you enjoy. Ritual of Desperation. At a Q&A screening with Next Best Picture, twin brother directors Danny and Michael Philippou were asked what inspired them to create a film like this. Danny responded by saying, "I'll tell this story one more time. It's a really hard story to tell. Our cousin lost her 2-year-old, and we were in the hospital with her and the family, surrounding her in the hospital bed, and he was in the hospital bed, and they were holding on to every part of him, his hands and his feet and his head. And my cousin was the last person to let him go, and she looked like she was never gonna be okay ever again." And Danny goes on to explain how looking at an endless cycle of grief through the lens of horror filmmaking is the best way for him and his brother to express these darker feelings and lift off the weight of these emotions in the real world. So in this film, our antagonist Laura is experiencing the same devastation and desperation. She's lost a daughter and can't bear to live a life without her. But Laura uniquely has resorted to sacrificial, supernatural, manipulative methods to bring her daughter back. And the Philippou brothers did their research to design the rules for their film's ritual. And as we see in Laura's horrifying occultist VHS footage, the ritual in this film is designed to, of course, bring Laura's daughter Kathy back to life, with a few costly exchanges along the way. The ritual starts by summoning a demon through a human host. The host in this case is Connor Bird, a little boy Laura has kidnapped and renamed Oliver, Ollie for short. Ollie carries a new birthmark under his eye, which Danny describes as the stain on the soul carried across all these different possessions, which is why we don't see it in his missing poster. As in witchcraft and demonology historically, a demon may leave a signature mark on the host it occupies. Also, in ancient and modern occultism, the demon is kept contained within a salt circle, which Laura traces around the house. But Ollie is only the host for the demon to bring Laura's daughter back. Laura's plan is to transfer the soul out of her daughter Kathy and into her newly adopted daughter Piper. This ritual is the only way to bring Kathy back to life, to live in the body of Piper. And to initiate this soul transfer, Piper needs to die in the same way Kathy died originally, by drowning in the backyard swimming pool. So the entire film is a grieving woman's desperate orchestration of an unfamiliar ritual to possess a young boy, sacrifice a young girl, and revive her only daughter. But along the way, of course, there are many hiccups because of a few uninvited guests and an unforgiving process that, as you've likely seen, is not very pretty. The transfer requires Ollie to ingest the flesh of the old dead body, Kathy, and regurgitate it into the newly dead body, Piper. And although the rain hasn't yet filled the pool and Piper hasn't been killed, the awakened demon in Ollie is still craving this ritualistic meal. Therefore, he tries to eat everything. He eats bugs, he raids the fridge, and it's highly suggested he eats some of Laura's cat. And in a few clips I won't show because I honestly can't bear to look at them as I edit this video, he eats his own skin, he eats the table, and he even tries to eat a knife. And we see a few moments where the real boy, Connor Bird, comes through to the surface just a little bit. He writes his real last name on the notepad for Andy, and he asks Laura who she is as if he's awakened from the possession briefly. But on the flip side, unfortunately, Laura's learned the appropriate techniques to keep Connor suppressed. She talks to the demon through him. She runs her finger over his head in a circular motion and makes a blood oath through the window for him to obey her every command once again. And I do eventually want to explain Oliver's battered, swollen, pregnant-looking final form, as well as the finale itself. But we must first discuss the psychology of our main characters to give the finale the symbolic context it deserves. Misleading the blind. In the first section, we talked about the story of Danny and Michael's cousin, and how it was a major inspiration for the film and the character of Laura. However, shortly after in the interview, the brothers mentioned another personal relationship that inspired another major character. There was a conversation about our friend's little sister who's non-sighted, and this thing about navigating onto the bus for the first time and wanting to be independent and catching the bus on her own. And the parents were scared to allow it and take that step. And I could see both sides of the argument. It was also a starting point for Piper. And this is exactly where Piper starts off in the film. She's putting herself out there, but she's bullied for her disability. And when Andy arrives to save her, the last thing she wants is saving, also refusing to use her cane. But whether Piper wants help or not, there will be people she'll need to depend on, as for us all. And this is what sparks these themes of trust and misguidance. And the visuals of Piper's hand are a beautiful symbol of this. The camera's vivid focus on Piper's fingers over the walls is what she sees clearly through touch. And when Laura enters the picture, literally and figuratively, she's nothing more than a moving shape in the light, which is how Piper sees her and is indicative of how much Piper needs to trust her. And once Piper takes Laura's hand, the camera refocuses. It all foreshadows this enormous matter of trust Piper is giving, which lies completely in the hands of the guide. But of course, Laura completely misuses this level of power and responsibility. The brothers highlight how the horror of Laura comes from the concept of a psychologist who knows how to heal and help people, but uses those exact skills to do the opposite, damage and control people. Laura uses her 20-year-long expertise in therapy and counseling to benefit herself, essentially remove Andy from the picture and complete the ritual with Piper. And Laura uses these tactics on Andy as well. You're supposed to be able to trust your guardian. She's using that power to twist that idea. You see from the very beginning, she's observing Andy to find ways to break him. As a good therapist does, she makes him comfortable enough to open up, listen to him closely, and learns as much as she can about his issues, the abuse of his father, his jealousy of his sister, and his longing for acknowledgement from a parent. Then she uses that insight to tear him apart psychologically. She laces his protein with drugs to fuel his delusions, and further blurs distinction between what is real, what's in his head, and what is and isn't happening to him. And as we see, she takes extensive measures to invade his privacy, tell him lies, and even give him what he wants at times to persuade him into giving himself over to her even more. It's diabolical. But I think it's important to highlight that it's not only Laura who's an unreliable guide. Andy is also dishonest with Piper. Andy often lies to his sister to soften and brighten Piper's reality when life is being cruel. Even their code word, grapefruit, doesn't always stop him from a kind, white lie. But in order for us to grow, we need to see our reality crystal clearly. Even when life is at its ugliest, it makes us stronger, wiser, and more intuitive. But it's the terribly unforgiving finale of this film that sets Piper free into the life of independence she's been dying for. So let's discuss how these journeys come to an end with an endless level of symbolism and meaning. Denial of death. To perfectly set the stage for the thematic and symbolic meaning of the film's ending, I need to pull an important quote from Danny in an interview with Esquire. Laura has this weird relationship with death. She's comfortable with it in this weird way. She's dabbling in the occult. She has this taxidermy dog, and then she's got this sort of taxidermy daughter in the pool shed as well. And she's dressed up bright and colorful at a funeral. It's a different way of perceiving a connection with death. Laura deals with death in a way where she doesn't completely accept it. She stuffs her dead dog and keeps him in the living room. She speaks about her dead daughter in the present tense. She wears casual clothes to the funeral and tells Andy the soul is still alive in his father's dead body. It's this everlasting form of denial that spirals her slowly further and further into madness. She's trapped in this grief cycle. The kids manage to break out of that in the end, but she's still stuck there. And she's not allowing herself to go out into the world and heal. She's isolating herself in this way. And that idea of a never-ending grief cycle is terrifying. And as the film goes along, we come to realize that Laura is just as much a villain as she is a victim of circumstance and a victim of herself. And the despicable things she does to other characters in the film feel more like acts of pure desperation. As Jonah Wren Phillips says, Laura relies on Oliver, but is horrified by him. While she pushes Oliver through this torturous transformation, we hear her say, "Is this working? Is this part of it?" And as the Philippous say, that's where the true horror lies. Hope within hopelessness, something very real. And it's no coincidence that every element of technical horror filmmaking ties in with the real-life themes of the movie. The brothers highlight how every visual and practical effect needs to have a thematic purpose. Harboring grief makes us quiet, is all-consuming, and destroys us from the inside out, as we see happen physically to Oliver. And every character gets their own audio-visual language to capture their perspective. Everyone had their own visual language in the film, each character, and we also knew that they all wanted to have their audio language too. Piper's hyper-awareness of sound and touch gives us these tightly focused visuals of her hands, with the most vivid sound design of her fingers sliding across the walls. And the most intense moments of Laura's madness and desperation backdrop the sound with VHS tape static. And as Andy's misunderstanding of reality heightens, we also struggle more and more to tell as an audience if what he is experiencing and hearing and seeing is real or not. And on the note of Andy and his delusions, there's one sequence in the shower where his father appears behind the glass and tells him, "She dies in the rain," where in a split second, he turns into Ollie. This most certainly was the demon who occupies Oliver's body, speaking through Oliver and taking on the image of Andy's father. And it seems this demon can take on forms of different dead characters through Ollie. For example, after Andy dies, Oliver lures Piper into the room with Andy's voice in an attempt to complete the ritual. This statement from Andy's father also foreshadows the completion of the ritual very soon to come at this point in the film. So let's talk about the ending. As the rain fills the pool, Ollie makes his way to Kathy in the freezer to consume her flesh and blood. Because of the unexpected return of Andy and the social worker, the process is halted. And because of this delay, Ollie's stomach begins to swell and his body begins to bloat, signifying this need to release what has been consumed. And as Oliver desperately chases Piper to complete the ritual, she unintentionally leads him to fall out of the protective salt circle where the demon is released from his body. And while this entire final sequence is as intense, brutal, and unforgiving as a horror finale can be, it's all cloaked under the most somber, dramatic musical score, as if it's a finale to a classic tragedy. And there's actually a reason for this, and it's a very sad one. Just before production of the film, the brothers lost a young family friend, which suddenly transformed the style, emotion, and direction of the ending more from horror to drama. As Danny describes, in that moment in the pool shed with Laura and the corpse, it was just like directing through tears. Laura fails to kill Piper, a moment too reminiscent of life with her daughter and too traumatic a reminder of the death of her daughter. And while Piper has lost a mother, a father, and now a brother, she embarks on a journey of more independence than she ever even asked for. Set free from a past she will never get back.